Welcome back, everyone. Ready for another deep dive into the world of math.
Always ready for a good math adventure.
We've covered some fascinating territory in past deep dives, from the mysteries of prime numbers
Oh, yeah, those are always
to
fun.
the mind-bending world of space-time geometry.
It's incredible how math can explain so much about the universe, isn't it?
Absolutely. But today, we're going to explore how advanced math is actually helping you save money right in your own home.
That's right, we're shining a light on LEDs.
Literally.
Exactly, those energy-efficient marvels that are pretty much everywhere these days.
You probably already know that LEDs are great for saving energy,
Definitely.
but you might not know that they faced a bit of a hurdle early on.
Oh, are you talking about that green gap issue?
The green gap, exactly. It turned out that creating efficient green LEDs was a real challenge, which kind of held back the whole LED revolution for a while.
It's fascinating how something seemingly simple like the color green could cause such a bottleneck.
It really is. But that's where the fascinating world of the landscape function comes in.
Ah, yes, the landscape function.
It's this mathematical tool that has helped scientists understand how waves, like light waves, behave, especially in systems that have a bit of randomness or disorder to them.
Disorder, so we're not talking about perfectly ordered crystals here.
Not exactly, and this is where things get really mind-blowing. I was reading Terence Tao's blog post about this. He's a brilliant mathematician, by the way.
Oh yeah, I've read some of his work. He's incredible.
So Tao was talking about how the landscape function is now being used to optimize the design of LEDs, making them even more energy efficient.
Hold on, so we're using this abstract mathematical concept to improve something as practical as lighting.
You got it. It just shows how powerful math can be in uncovering hidden connections in the world around us.
It really makes you wonder what other hidden connections are out there, just waiting to be discovered.
Exactly. But before we dive too deep into the landscape function, let's take a quick step back and remind ourselves how LEDs actually work.
Good idea. It's always good to start with the basics.
Okay, so LEDs are essentially tiny chips made of semiconductors.
Semiconductors as materials that are kind of in between conductors and insulators.
Right, they're not as good at conducting electricity as something like copper, but they're not completely blocking the flow either, like rubber.
And it's this in-between nature that makes semiconductors so useful, not just for LEDs, but for all sorts of electronics.
Exactly, so when you apply voltage across an LED semiconductor, you're essentially pushing electrons, those tiny negatively charged particles, from one side to the other.
And as they move, they leave behind holes. Think of them like empty spaces where an electron should be.
So it's like a game of musical chairs, but with electrons.
Kind of, and when an electron finds an empty hole, they recombine.
And that's when the magic happens.
Exactly, that recombination releases energy in the form of light.
So every time you switch on an LED, you're witnessing a miniature fireworks show inside that tiny chip.
You could say that, and the color of the light, whether it's red, green, blue, or white, depends on the specific material used and how it's structured.
So the arrangement of atoms inside the LED determines what color we see. That's pretty neat.
It is, but here's the thing. The efficiency of an LED, how much light you get for the electricity you put in, depends critically on the design of those semiconductor layers.
To make LEDs super efficient, scientists have to solve some pretty complex equations, huh?
Oh, absolutely. They're essentially dealing with the Schrödinger equation, which governs the behavior of quantum particles like electrons.
The Schrödinger equation. Now that sounds a little intimidating.
It can be, but it's essential for understanding how electrons move and interact within those semiconductor layers.
Okay, so far so good. But you mentioned something earlier about disorder. Does that make things even more complicated?
You bet it does. See, in LEDs, you don't have a perfectly ordered crystal structure. There's a certain degree of randomness in how the atoms are arranged.
So it's not like a perfectly stacked Lego tower, but more like a jumbled pile of Legos.
Exactly, and that randomness, that disorder, makes the Schrödinger equation incredibly difficult to solve directly.
I can imagine. It's like trying to predict where a pinball will go on a table, where the bumpers are constantly moving and changing shape.
I love that analogy. It perfectly captures the challenge of working with disordered systems.
So how do scientists even begin to tackle a problem like that?
Well, that's where the landscape function comes to the rescue. This mathematical tool helps researchers tame that disorder and get a handle on the problem.
Okay, so the landscape function is like a secret weapon for dealing with messy, real-world systems.
You could say that it's a powerful tool for understanding how waves, and in this case electrons, behave in environments that aren't perfectly ordered.
But how does it actually work? Is it somehow simplify the Schrödinger equation?
It does, in a way. Think of the landscape function as creating a kind of guide for the electrons.
Okay, I'm listening.
By calculating this function, researchers can get a much clearer picture of how electrons will move through that jumbled, disordered world inside the LED.
So it's like creating a 3D map where the peaks and valleys represent the energy levels inside the LED, And the landscape function is showing us the easiest paths for the electrons to follow.
That's an excellent way to visualize it. Finding those low energy pathways means more light and less wasted energy, which leads to a more efficient LED.
Okay, now it's all starting to click. This is how they design LEDs to squeeze out every last bit of light, right? But how does this tie back to that green gap problem we were talking about earlier?
Ah, that's where things get even more interesting. So it turns out that a bit of disorder, that messiness we were talking about?
Yeah, the jumbled Legos?
Right. Well, a certain amount of that is actually crucial for making efficient LEDs.
Really? So a little chaos actually helps.
Exactly. It's a phenomenon called Anderson localization, and it's pretty fascinating. Essentially, this disorder can actually trap electrons and holes in the active region of the LED.
Trapping them. I thought we wanted them to move around and recombine.
We do, but think of it like the disorder creates little pockets where the electrons and holes are more likely to bump into each other.
So it's like creating more opportunities for those miniature fireworks shows to happen.
Exactly. And the more of combinations you have, the more light you get. But here's the catch.
There's always a catch, isn't there?
There is too much disorder, and the electrons get completely stuck. They can't move at all, and the material basically becomes an insulator.
Oh, so it's like finding the sweet spot, the Goldilocks zone for a disorder.
That's a perfect way to put it. Not too much, not too little, but just the right amount of disorder to maximize efficiency.
Okay, so that's where the landscape function comes in, right? To help find that sweet spot.
You got it. It's like having a map to navigate that energy landscape inside the LED, showing researchers where the optimal level of disorder lies.
So it's guiding them to design the most efficient LED structure.
Exactly. And remember that green gap problem? Well, the landscape function played a key role in solving it.
How so?
Well, researchers figured out that they could intentionally introduce tiny defects into the semiconductor layers. These defects, called V defects because of their shape, actually enhance the movement of electrons in holes, especially in the green part of the spectrum.
So they're adding a little bit of controlled chaos into the mix.
That's a great way to think about it, and it works. These V defects helped close the green gap and boosted the overall efficiency of LEDs across the board.
That's impressive. So it's like creating a more efficient highway system for the electrons inside the LED with those V defects acting as little on-ramps and off-ramps.
I like that analogy, and the impact of these advancements has been huge.
I bet we're talking about more than just better lighting, right? I mean, Tal mentioned that U.S. residential electricity consumption has actually gone down in recent years.
That's right, and a significant part of that decrease is attributed to the LED revolution.
So we're talking about real savings on our electricity bills, all thanks to a little bit of math and a lot of ingenuity.
Exactly. A 2020 estimate put the annual energy savings in the U.S. from switching to LEDs at a whopping $14.7 billion.
Wow, that's incredible. So everyone who switched to LEDs is basically saving money thanks to advanced math.
It's pretty amazing, isn't it? And it's only going to get better. Projections show that by 2035, the cumulative savings could reach a staggering $890 billion in the U.S. alone.
Now that's what I call a bright future. But I have to ask, does this landscape function approach only work for LEDs? Or could it be applied to other materials and technologies as well?
That's a great question, and the answer is a resounding yes. What's so remarkable about the landscape function is that it can be applied to any system where there's a lot of disorder or randomness.
And we know there's a shortage of those in the world.
Right, and that opens up a whole world of possibilities. Think about solar cells, for example.
Oh yeah, those are all about capturing sunlight and converting it into electricity.
Exactly. They're also based on semiconductors and rely on the efficient movement of electrons. Just like with LEDs, tweaking the landscape within a solar cell could lead to significant improvements in efficiency.
So potentially we could see a solar power breakthrough thanks to this mathematical tool. Now that's exciting.
Absolutely, and it doesn't stop there. What about batteries? Those are essential for pretty much everything these days.
True. From our phones to electric cars, it seems like everything runs on batteries.
Exactly, and the efficiency of those batteries is heavily influenced by the structure of their materials.
Just like with LED.
Precisely. So using the landscape function, we could potentially design batteries that charge faster, hold more energy, and last longer.
Wow, cheaper and more efficient solar cells, better batteries. It's mind-boggling to think that math is at the heart of all these potential advancements.
It really highlights the power of mathematics to unlock new possibilities, but we're just scratching the surface here.
What do you mean? Is there more?
Remember how Tao mentioned using the landscape function to understand things like protein folding and even the spread of diseases?
Oh yeah, that's right. But those seem like completely different problems from designing LEDs or solar cells.
They are, but the underlying principle is the same. We're dealing with complex systems, lots of interacting components, and a certain degree of randomness or disorder that we need to understand and manage. So we're talking about applying this mathematical tool to understand things like how proteins fold into specific shapes and how diseases spread through a population.
I'm still having a little trouble wrapping my head around that. How does the landscape function actually apply to something like protein folding?
Okay, so you know how proteins are these long chains of amino acids, right?
Yeah, I remember that from biology class.
Well, those chains fold into incredibly specific 3D shapes.
And that shape determines how the protein functions, right?
Exactly. And if a protein misfolds, it can lead to all sorts of problems, like diseases like Alzheimer's or even cancer.
So it's like trying to predict how a string of beads will tangle up and form knots, but on a much more complex level, I imagine.
That's a great way to think about it, and that's where the landscape function comes in. It could help us unravel this complex folding process.
Okay, but how?
Imagine a mathematical landscape where every single point represents a possible configuration of that protein.
Okay, I'm picturing a really bumpy landscape with lots of peaks and valleys.
Exactly, and the height of each point on that landscape corresponds to the energy of that particular protein configuration.
So the lower the point on the landscape, the more stable that protein structure.
Exactly. The lowest points would represent the most stable, the properly folded protein structures.
So by analyzing this mathematical landscape, researchers could potentially identify the paths that proteins take as they fold, like finding the most efficient routes through that landscape.
Precisely. And not only that, but they could also see what factors might disrupt the folding process. What might cause those proteins to misfold and potentially lead to disease.
Wow, that would be a game changer for understanding and treating so many diseases.
It really could. But we're not done yet. Let's talk about applying the landscape function to something even more complex, the spread of diseases.
Okay, now that one seems even harder to grasp. I mean, disease outbreaks can feel so random and unpredictable.
They can, but there are patterns and underlying factors at play. Think about it. We have individuals, their social networks, geographical locations, and even random events.
Lots of moving parts.
Lots of moving parts. And the landscape function could help us make sense of it all.
So instead of a protein folding into a specific shape, we're now looking at a disease spreading through a population.
You got it. Imagine a landscape where each point represents a different state of the epidemic, like how many people are infected in each location.
And the landscape function would show us how the disease is likely to spread based on those factors.
Precisely. We could see which pathways are most likely and which interventions might be most effective.
So we could potentially identify the best strategies to, say, flatten the curve and prevent a widespread outbreak.
Exactly. It's like having a powerful tool for public health planning and response.
This is truly incredible. A tool initially developed to understand how waves behave could end up revolutionizing healthcare and disease prevention. It just shows how interconnected different fields of study can be.
And how math can be a powerful tool for solving real-world problems.
It really highlights how important it is to support research in all areas, even if the practical applications aren't immediately obvious.
You never know where the next big breakthrough will come from.
Well, on that note, we've reached the end of our deep dive for today.
Time flies when you're exploring the fascinating world of math.
We've journeyed from the inner workings of LEDs to the mind-boggling landscapes of protein folding and disease spread.
And we've seen how a single mathematical concept can have such a wide-ranging impact.
So keep learning, keep asking questions, and never stop exploring the amazing world of mathematics.
You never know what you might discover.
Until next time, keep those mathematical minds buzzing.